Hello and welcome back to All For United WFC, match day 2 in the WSL, United versus Everton. Some people's favourite ground, some people's worse than the WSL, going over to Walton Hall Park. I said some people absolutely love it, but I'm sure we're going to get into all that. So I've got Peter back with me to talk all through what to expect from an Everton point of view and things like that. Because Everton are an intriguing club. If anyone obviously watches the men's side as well as the women's, there's a lot going on at Everton, a lot of noise and things like that. So we're going to get into all that as well. So Peter, thanks for joining me this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'd be happier if results started picking up on the pitch, but yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah, looking forward to tomorrow.
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. So I'll just start off, and obviously from a women's point of view, from the Everton side, just how things have gone. Obviously, we played one game already. What's your kind of overall thoughts going into the season so far? Your transfer window that you had, is it about where you wanted it to be? Or is it a bit lower? Where were your kind of thoughts going into the season?
I think first of all, I'm very happy with the signings that we've made. I think Inma Gabaro in particular, it looks like a fantastic player, Spanish player who's come over. She's done really well in pre-season. Honoka Hayashi as well. Again, I really rated her at West Ham. I think she's a cracking signing. Tricky Sari, another player who's, I think she's probably gone under the radar slightly in terms of just how good a player I think she is. Obviously got a lot of WSL experience as well, which helps. And then Tony Payne as well, another player who I think will have a massive impact on us this season. She plays in a position coming off the right-hand side and she'll prove to be a valuable outlet for us. She's got a lot of pace, very direct. I'm probably the type of player we were missing last season, where we tended to have a lot of possession. It's this possession-based football that Brian Sorensen loves so much, but we didn't really have an outlet or anyone who could break the line a little bit. Someone who could offer a bit of an outlet, and I think Tony Payne will offer us that just with purely from a positional sense and because of her pace. So I'm reasonably happy with the transfer window. One position where I think that we may struggle this season is at the back, at centre half, because we've only really got Meg Finnegan, who's an established, WSL centre half. We're having to play Justine van Havermaet at the back. Lucy Hope's played there. Karen Holmgaard, who's more of a midfielder, drops in there. So, one injury to Meg Finnegan, and I think we might be in a bit of trouble. But it's, yes, as I say, because of the style of football that Brian Sorensen likes to play, he's very possession orientated. So I think that's probably his reasoning behind it. He believes that he's got enough in that squad, with the likes of Justine and Lucy Hope to be able to combat that lack of cover at centre half.
No, it's interesting because that sounds very forced, whereas United, obviously playing Leah Golden at left back or left wing, it's kind of like a three at the back is very much a choice from United's point of view to play forwards in more defensive positions. And Jade was playing centre back at times last weekend as well. So we're, in terms of in our positions, I've got no idea what we're going to see tomorrow. If it's going to be more of the same, it could be players all over the place. But that's what I did take away from your opener, obviously against Brighton, which. It's a real tough one to gauge that, because a lot of people were really hyping Brighton up over the transfer window, and that result last week clearly helped boost the Brighton hype train, if you want to call it that. Was that more of a case of Brighton were exceptional on the day, or was it a case of you just weren't as good as maybe you could show? Where does it kind of stand from a last week's result point of view?
Well, I don't think you can take anything away from Brighton. I think they took their chances. I think that they were a massive threat, certainly in the second half. I actually thought the first half we did okay. It was a very sort of even contest, but it just got away with us as soon as, I think it was when the third went in, to be honest. I think it was the penalty went in, and then it just completely sapped all life out of our performance. It was compounded as well by, the injury to Yaya Ghali at the end of the game, still fighting for the ball in the 90th minute. Or, the last 5 minutes, she was still fighting for the ball, trying to win back possession in the final third. And she's unfortunately done her ACL. So it wasn't a good day at the office, to say it lightly, for Everton. I still think that, I think it's one of those things where, again, I keep referring to the style of football that Brian Sorensen likes to play. The only issue I have is that he only has one set style of play. It's literally, it's possession based, build up from the back at all costs. There's no changing it up. There's no grinding out a result. There's no sort of, you know, changing things up if you're chasing a goal. It literally is, you know, we stick to our guns and we carry on trying to play this football. Unfortunately, it gets us into trouble, which it did against Brighton. Certainly the opening goal came from us being in possession and being loose on the ball and getting hit, and them taking advantage of it. So yeah, it's a disappointing start to say the least. Certainly with the injury to Yaya as well. I think that's the biggest blow that we could have possibly had, because she's such an important player and such a great person as well. But you know, I still think there's plenty of potential in the squad, and it's one of those things where I don't think we're going to start off the season particularly quickly, put it that way. It's going to take time to bed in the new players, get used to this new style of, you know, a style of football that they might not necessarily have played before. But yeah, it's an interesting one for me at the moment, because as much as I do get on board and sort of, you know, we obviously back the players, we back the manager, we want to get behind the team, I still would like to see a little bit of variation in the play, and unfortunately, I'm not sure whether that's going to happen. So it's one of those things. As long as, you know, results don't get too bad, we've got to sort of stick with it and see where we end up.
I think that's something United can exploit, actually, from just flipping it from a United point of view, because our first goal comes from Jay's high pressing. You know, the West Ham centre defender really should have that, but it's Jay's high press, and we press really from particularly the first kind of 50 minutes against West Ham. United would really press them from the front with 4 forwards essentially. So if Everton are going to continue playing out from the back with that kind of high risk, I mean, it's high reward if you get it right. If you beat the press, then you've taken 4 players out of the game. But it is very high risk. I think when you've got what I expect the team to be, which is very similar to be last week, if you've got Galton, Toon, Clinton, and Jace all running at your back 4, that's obviously going to have that added pressure as well, I would have thought. So that's something I think United will look to exploit. And obviously you mentioned Galia as well. That's obviously a big loss and a shame for her, because she was actually the one Everton player last season that I looked at and thought that's somebody who really really stood out to me. And yeah, obviously unfortunately for her, the injury as well. I want to kind of come back to key players in a second, but from a player that both teams will know now, obviously, is Gabby George. We spoke about her a bit before we started recording. I just want to get your thoughts on her. Obviously, me and you did the show last summer when we signed her. Obviously, we didn't get to see much. I think she played 3 games, and then she did her ACL in that 3rd game. What do you make of her in terms of what to expect? Because she's coming back off 2 ACLs now. She's obviously been injured quite a few times. She's clearly highly rated. She's going to be playing off that left-hand side. What do you think her United career could be now? Because obviously it didn't get off to the start that she wanted. She's spoken very openly about that. Where do you think she can go from here?
I still think that, you know, the sky's the limit for Gabby George. I rated her highly. I think she's an absolutely fantastic player. Obviously, coming back from that type of injury is always going to be difficult for a player, but she did it for us, and she adapted a style of play slightly. You know, she's one of those players that I think she sees a challenge and she's up for it. Do you know what I mean? I think she'll see this as an opportunity to go on and prove herself again. I think she's going to be coming back very hungry. She's going to be wanting to fight for that place, and she's not going to be wanting to be sat on the bench and being a bit of a squad player. She wants to start games, and she'll want to make an impact. One thing I would say is that, I think, you know, sort of mentioned it before, I know what Gabby is like as a player, and I know how much determination she has, and sometimes you might have to rein it in a little bit and say to her just to calm down, because, you know, certainly when at a time at Everton, she just does have that winning mentality of fight till the final whistle, and sometimes it can be to a detriment. You know, a couple of times where she's picked up hamstring injuries chasing after a lost ball in the 93rd minute, you know, things like that. And you know, it's great to see as a fan, but at the same time, it's like you maybe just have to rein her in a little bit, because she is just has that determination and that fight in her. So yeah, I've got no doubts in Gabby George at all coming back from this injury. I think she'll just go on to prove yet again what a fantastic player she is. She's got the right attitude, she's got the skill set, she's got the right mentality. Yeah, we've got no problems at all about Gabby coming back and playing a blinder for United this season.
No, absolutely. I think she'll get a good reception tomorrow as well. Should she?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We love Gabby. Honestly, we love Gabby. We always have. You know, she won our Player of the Season numerous times, but just as a person as well, she's just a top player, top person. She'll get a great reception from us.
No, absolutely. That'd be good to see. I fully expect that she'll play at some point. Whether she starts or not, I'm not too sure. I think it's probably a bit too early for it to be starting yet. And I think United are doing the right thing, just bedding her back in. She played a few under-21s games and just managing her minutes. I don't want to see her coming back in starting straight away and then she gets injured again, because that's exactly what we've seen with previous ACL injuries like Miedemar and Pateas and these types of players, where they come back too soon and they get injured again and they have to have more surgery and are out for a while. So I think they're doing the right thing there. On that one. Before I kind of get into more, I guess, Everton women for the season ahead, looking ahead to that, obviously I just want to ask you very briefly, I don't know whether you can answer this briefly, in terms of what's going on at Everton at the moment, because there's a lot of, I guess, noise around the club, particularly from the men's side that's kind of coming out. Whether that's dripped through to the women's side, I'm not entirely sure. I've not followed it that closely. But how would you summarise what's going on? Because there's obviously the stadium move for the men's side, as well as obviously things with the ownership. The results obviously aren't helping as well, particularly on the men's side, as we said. But yeah, what is kind of going on there, and do you see a brighter future, kind of around the corner?
I mean, there's certainly light at the end of the tunnel, for one. It's been a really tough few years for Everton Football Club as a whole. Men's side, women's side, and everything does have a knock-on effect for both teams. The ownership situation. I mean, there's been a lot of sort of false report in terms of what's happened with Everton Football Club, in terms of what's happening with this PSR thing. One of the things that people like to quote is that our wage bill went up to something like 90% overnight, and it was like, well, we actually had the issue. The biggest issue was that we lost our main sponsor, which was Megafon/USM, because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Obviously, with the ties to Russia that Usmanov has, that cut off all the funding. And one of the things that kind of went under the radar is that they were the main sponsor for the women's team. So Megafon were on the front of the women's shirts. They were sponsoring Walton Hall Park. They were actually meant to be funding the development of Walton Hall Park, which, the plans are in place for that. So I know that it can be a bit of a frustrating place to go to for some people at the moment, but just bear with us, because the plans, when we first moved into there, we expected that within 3 years that place would be completely finished. And we're 4 years on now, and it's still at that sort of early stage. But the reason is purely down to the fact that the funding for that got cut. So it's one of the things that we're hoping. The new ownership has been announced last week. Still got to go through, certain checks, Premier League checks and things like that. But we hope there won't be a problem with that. The owners are actually the owners from Roma, the Friedkin Group. So they've obviously got a good track record, certainly in the women's game as well, with Roma winning the league over in Italy. And I think they're going to come in with the right attitude and the right mentality to not just come in and help the men's team and grow the men's team, but I think they're going to want to have a good crack at the WSL as well. And hopefully that starts with the redevelopment of the ground. But as I say, it is all linked, because obviously you see cutbacks across the club. Brian Sorensen, we were talking briefly before about the issue with the back for Everton women. I mean, to be honest, that's a case of, I'm sure in an ideal world, he'd want to have gone out in the summer and brought in 2 or 3 centre halves, literally, 2 or 3 defenders to play across that back line just for cover or to start. But the reality is that there were other positions that we needed essentially to get in. And with the funds being so limited, because of the ownership situation, he had to, one hand tied behind his back. So it's massive. It's a huge step that we've got an owner who looks to come in to clear the debts just in time to move into, for the men's team to move into Bramley Moore. That will obviously bring in more income anyway. But also it's huge for what happens at Walton Hall Park as well. But it's certainly something we as a supporters club are going to be pressing from the new owners. We want to make sure that the women's team is backed. It's not just about the men's team and what happens at Bramley Moor Dock. It's about what happens at Walton Hall Park as well.
No, absolutely. Because as I said, the ground's got potential itself, and the playing squad is there. And I actually do think Sorensen's actually a good coach or good manager, whichever one you want to call it. And I think when you're looking at, I was just having a look there, that back line that played against Brighton, it's almost just like that is not a strong WSL back line. Because we'll come to kind of season predictions in a second, but there's a reason I've put Everton in my bottom 3, and that's part of the reason. Because I think Everton will win enough, but I don't think they'll keep enough teams out to pick up enough points to jump the likes of Leicester, Brighton, these kind of teams above. So that kind of leads me on to my question. So what is a successful season for Everton this year? Obviously, with things going on, a change of ownership and things like that, where are you kind of expecting to be, and what's kind of, I guess, overachieving / underachieving?
Well, I think it's still up for anywhere from sort of 6th down is probably up for grabs for anyone, to be honest with you. Obviously, Aston Villa had a bit of a downturn last season. They look like they've got their act together now. Brighton obviously invested very well. I think West Ham have invested wisely, with limited sort of funds. I know that they lost a lot of players, but I still think they've done decent business. Palace have come up, and I know that they got absolutely tonked by Chelsea last night. But again, looking at before they absolutely fell apart, I thought they gave Chelsea a good game, certainly in the first half. So I think it's a difficult one. The main priority is staying in the league, obviously, especially with the new changes coming in, with the new league owners coming in. As I say, the new owners for Everton Football Club as well. It's just essential that we stay in the league. Hopefully, it depends on how well we start as well, because we've had a terrible result against Brighton. We've got United tomorrow, which is, again, historically we never do well against you, so that's gonna be, it's real sort of backs against the wall kind of stuff. It's difficult at the moment unless we pull a result out of somewhere to see where we're going to be in 4 or 5 games time. But as I say, I think it's essential. First of all, first priority is to make sure that we're still in the league. But yeah, it's a strange one this season. I think a lot of places are up for grabs. Leicester, I'm not really too impressed with. I'll be honest with you. I don't think that they're any better than Everton. I don't even think Liverpool are, to be honest with you. I think Liverpool, I've never rated, and I don't really rate them. We played them in pre-season. Not particularly fussed about them. They had a great season last year, but I saw it more as a flash in the pan. I don't think player for player they've got a better squad than Everton at the moment. So yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, to be honest with you. But again, going back to Brian Sorensen as well, I do have the sympathy in terms of the fact that if he's not able to bring in certain players, and I know certainly his transfer list was, or his favoured transfers, there was a wide range of players on there who I think would have improved Everton massively. As it happens, the players he got in will do that. But I do feel sympathy for him in the fact that there were probably a couple of positions he would have wanted to have strengthened in, and then that would have aided him with wanting to play this style of football. I just hope that what happens is that we don't just completely fall apart and go on a real bad losing streak. Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer, to be honest with you. Basically, stay in the league and then go from there.
No, because I was just saying about not going to lose on a losing run. I was just having a look. They're obviously United tomorrow, then Newcastle in the League Cup. But in the league, then it's Arsenal away after that, which you would expect is probably another loss. But then you've got 2 very winnable games in West Ham at home and Leicester away. So that's the kind of 2 games I'd be looking at. If Everton don't win both of those, then I think Everton are in trouble. Whereas I think you win those 2, we'll get 4 points out of those, or even 3, I think is probably decent enough out of those 3. I think should be fine for the rest of the league. But they're the 2 big ones, I think, looking at the fixtures that Everton have got to win if they're going to stay up. Well, to be honest, I don't know. I've just put Everton, West Ham, Palace as my bottom 3 and just kind of went, it'll be between those 3. But don't know. As you said last season with Liverpool, I think Liverpool will drop off this year because when you look at Liverpool last season and taking nothing away from them, they had a great season, but they were. Laura spoke about this on our Women's Football channel. They were really outperforming a lot of their stats. They were well ahead of what they were expected goals conceded. They were outperforming every stat metric. So yeah, I think that will come back this season and they'll kind of fall probably to what Villa did, where they have that really good season and kind of drop back into the mid-table, which I'm not against seeing. Sorry if there's any Liverpool fans watching this. I wouldn't mind seeing Liverpool drop down the table a little bit, but I'm sure Peter agrees with me on that one. Moving on in terms of, I just want to ask you from a United point of view, then I'll flip it to Everton in terms of who you're most, I guess, worried about from a United point of view. Who are you kind of looking at? It's a new look United, obviously new captain, new goalkeeper, new spine of the team, really. With new striker Elizabeth Turner as well. Who are you kind of looking at as a big threat from a United point of view there?
Well, Leah Galton always scores against us, so she's she's straight off the bat. But Grace Clinton, what a player! I mean, she was a fantastic player for us. She's obviously a very young player, very raw, but we could see the potential in Grace, you know, from the second she stepped on the pitch. I think she's got a fantastic, huge future ahead of her. Obviously, saw her at Tottenham on loan last season. Did her the world of good playing regular football in the WSL, and she's come back. She scored a goal last weekend as well, didn't she? For United. I think that Grace will be a huge threat for us tomorrow. I really rate her, I really do. And again, another player who we got to know very well when she was at Everton as a supporters club, and someone who, you know, I've got a lot of time for. Got a lot of time for Grace. And yeah, she's going to be a massive threat. I think she's going to want to come back and prove something as well, as players always do when they come back against their old club. But I just hope she doesn't. If she does score, she doesn't celebrate too hard, because we do like her. Do you know? So if you're watching Grace, take it easy.
It's a good show, actually. I didn't think you were going to say it, but now I think about it, obviously she got the goal last weekend. She was our player at the match last weekend as well, as we did our little poll last week. So I would expect her to have a big impact. She's playing just off the striker as well, so she's going to be in the box, kind of, you know, getting shots on target and things like that. So yeah, I'm intrigued by that. I'm more intrigued to see how United set up again tomorrow, to be honest, because obviously we're trying out this new system this season, and I think it worked against West Ham for the most part. There were flaws in it, but it worked for the most part. Can it keep working, I think, is the big question. So I'm intrigued to see how that kind of plays out. From an Everton point of view, then who should United be kind of looking out for? Who's kind of your standouts now?
Well, sort of touched on it before. I think Tony Payne, even against Brighton last week, where we got absolutely hammered 4-0. But while Tony was on the pitch, she was a constant threat. She's always that outlet where we can play that quick diagonal, where we can break the line, where we can sort of break that press and ping the ball over the top. Something that we haven't been able to do for a couple of seasons now. So I think Tony Payne, Heather Payne as well. Our Irish right wing back, another player who's very direct, someone who's very confident. She's happy to stand a full back up and take them on one. I say great on the overlap. I'm really looking forward to seeing if her and Tony Payne can actually get a good partnership going on that right hand side. I'm really excited for that. Heather's just coming back from a bit of an injury, so she's not fully fit just yet. But you know, I think the potential on that right hand side is huge for us this season. In Magabaro as well, again, touched on her, a very, very good, very technical player, someone who sits in the little pockets, someone who gets into very good space, very quick on the turn, very good link-up play, and it's going to be a huge threat for us. So yeah, there's a couple of players there who I think can cause United problems. Having said that, I think again it's going to be, as much as we like to talk about Brian Sorensen wanting to play football, a lot of our goals come from set pieces as well. So you've always got to be aware of the likes of Meg Finnegan. Meg's always she's got a bit of a habit of scoring in these sort of big games against big teams. Certainly loves scoring against Liverpool, for example. So I think Meg will always be a threat from set plays. And obviously you've got the likes of Justine van Havermaet as well. Who's probably one of the tallest players in the league, who also offers a goal threat from set pieces. The unfortunate thing now is that with missing Yaya, a lot of the assists from those set pieces came from Yaya last season. So we're going to have to get someone to come in and step up to the plate and hopefully try and do that job that unfortunately Yaya will be missing from.
No, absolutely. I remember being stood next to Justine last season, actually, and I was just like, "Oh my life, you are so tall." Like, on TV, you know, she looks tall, but when you stand near her, well, obviously at 1-on-1 with your pitch level, like it's like, oh wow, okay. You
think she'd score more headers though? Genuinely, I always she gets in really good positions, but yeah, I don't know whether she just gets overmarked. She ends up with about 3 players on her because they all know how tall she is. But yeah, it's
yeah, to be fair, I think fans will be surprised at how tall Tullis-Joyce is as well, actually. Obviously, our new goalkeeper, when again met her for the first time last season at Everton, when she was walking around the pitch, like, oh, wow, you are tall. Especially for a goalkeeper as well. You don't see too many goalkeepers in the women's game that are that kind of height these days.
Yeah.
So that could be quite something. I'd like to see that battle, actually. You know, some lofted, give her a bit Fallon a bit more of a challenge, not too much of a challenge, but those kind of high crosses into the box to see if she can handle some of those. Right, before we wrap this one up, then let's obviously do our score predictions and things like that. Obviously, you mentioned Everton don't tend to have a great record against United, and that is something that when I come to do my prediction, that is very much in my thinking for this one. What kind of scoreline are you hoping for, and what do you think it's actually going to be?
See, my heart is telling me, a 1-1 draw, but my head is telling me, I'll be honest with you, it's probably going to be about 3 or 4-1 at best. If then that's a genuine thing. Just going off the historically for this fixture, given the quality in United side and given some of our struggles in certain positions at the moment, I think this game is probably a bit too early in the season for us. But having said that, if we can go in there with the right mentality, right attitude, and obviously with the right fight, then we've got a chance. But I say heart says draw 1-1, head says 3-1, 4-1 United.
Yeah, I'm glad you say, because that's kind of what I'm, and you won't really cover your ears for this. So the last 3 games, United have scored 16. So Everton's 1 over the last three meetings, obviously with the 5-0, the 7-0.
That's better than I thought, to be fair.
So I think waging your bet, obviously the 5-0 last season kind of stood out for United, actually, because it was quite a poor league season. That result kind of not covered over the cracks, but I think that game was not far away from our 2-2 draw at Brighton and 1-1 draw with Leicester at home. And it was like, but we've just won 5-0 and we can't beat Leicester at home. So it was kind of a weird one. Obviously, then the 7-0 in the Conti Cup, I remember that, because it was chucking down with rain. It was freezing cold. Let's be that night.
We don't count the Conti Cup. The Conti Cup doesn't mean anything. We can't count that.
To be fair,
no one cares about the Conti Cup, let's be honest.
I do this season. I want us to go and win that. But looking at the one thing I will say, obviously it says 4-1. Obviously, our most recent meeting, that was at LSV. But Everton were 1-0 up at half time in that game. And I remember saying to the people around me, like, I'm worried here because we were awful in that first half. And Everton did do a really good job of kind of nullifying us. Then I think we scored 3 in about 6 minutes, I think, in the second half, and it obviously killed the game off. So I think from an Everton point of view, if you could do that again, in terms of frustrating United like you did in that first half at LSV, I think it could cause United some problems. But I think if United get an early goal, I think this is going to be similar to last season at Walnut Park, where it's kind of 4 or 5 again. Potentially with the firepower, you think that you've got players like Melvin Mallard that's not even getting into the squad, not even getting on the pitch at the moment. Miyazawa, Bizet, and all these kind of players that are on the bench to come on to change the game as well, I think is good options to have. So, yeah, I want us to keep another clean sheet because I'd like Fallon to keep another clean sheet going into the Chelsea game that we've got next week. So, yeah, I think 4-0 is probably about where I'm thinking at the moment. But to be honest, who knows? As I said, it's a new United this season, so I'm going into every game thinking I've got no idea what to expect this season. We'll wrap it up there because obviously it's a bit of a shorter preview. We're trying to do a few of these over the course of the season. If people want to find you and find obviously the work you do with Everton, you mentioned the sports club as well. Where can people do all of that?
Yeah, if you go on Twitter, our Twitter handle is ELFC fans. The Everton Women Official Supporters Club. So I'm secretary of the Official Supporters Club. So yeah, come and say hello to us at Walton Hall Park tomorrow. Everyone's always welcome at Walton Hall Park. You'll probably see us putting our flags up. But yeah, make sure you come and say hello. As I say, you can check out our Instagram page as well, Everton Women Official Supporters Club. And then I also do a lot of work on the Blue Room as well, which is an Everton podcast. So you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere else, Spotify, anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Make sure you go and check all of that out. It's definitely worth it. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. We'll obviously see how the result pans out tomorrow at the time of recording this, and yeah, we'll see what happens on that one. Make sure you like in this video and subscribe if you are new around here, and we should see you guys on Monday.